on yourself, and we are going, oh, I thought there was something out there. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for today's video. We will be making a Reformation style dress. I love Reformation, especially because they're a sustainable clothing brand, but their things can be pricey, and since I love to sew, I thought it'd be really fun to try to make a dupe out of stuff I had at home. So today I'll be using an old sheet to make a dress, and I hope you like it.
For this project, you'll need a bedsheet or whatever type of fabric you like, an iron, a ruler or measuring tape, a pencil, and scissors.
Okay, now that you have all your supplies out that you'll need, you're gonna have to do some measurements before you cut. We'll be doing some more measurements throughout the process, but the first thing we're gonna cut is the bottom, like skirt portion of the dress. So for that, you want to measure your waist, your hips, which are like the thickest part of your legs, and then measure the length that you want the skirt to end. And yeah, I'm gonna do that right now.
Here I am using a string to measure my waist and hips. My waist measures about 27 inches, but when I cut my fabric, I will be adding 2 to 3 inches to compensate for the likelihood of me making mistakes along the way. I also added about 2 inches to my hip measurements, and for my dress, I made the skirt portion about 18 inches long in length. Now that you took all your measurements, you want to cut out your fabric. To do this, you'll make a little pattern. So divide each of your measurements by 4. So my waist plus my wiggle room was about 29 inches, so that divided by 4 is 7 1/4 of an inch. This is what I marked on my fabric. Then from that waist mark, I went down 10 inches and marked my hip measurement. I also divided that by 4, so I got 10 inches for my hip measurement, which I marked on my fabric. Then from the top waist measurement, I went down 18 inches and marked the entire skirt's length. I then connected all the marks with a curved line, and that is what I cut out. Once all your measurements are marked out on your fabric, you want to cut along a folded edge of your fabric. Therefore, when you unfold it, it will be half of your skirt. You want to repeat this step 3 more times so you have a total of 4 skirt pieces. Depending on your fabric, you may only need to cut out 2 pieces, but my fabric was a little see-through, so I wanted to double layer the dress. Once all the pieces are cut, I am pinning 2 pieces together right side to right side. This means that the pattern side of the material is facing in towards each other. Once it is all sewn together, we will flip it right side out. After pinning, I sew down the 2 sides, leaving the top and bottom unsewn.
Now that you have all the pieces sewn together, it's time to attach like the front and back pieces to each other to make the full skirt. Before you sew the 2 skirt pieces together, you want to flip it back right side out. So now the front of the pattern is out.
I quickly ironed out the harsh seams before sewing the front and back pieces of the skirt together. As I started sewing more complicated pieces, I learned that ironing out your fabric does a lot. It allows for your seams and edges to be crisp and look more professional, so although it is a pain, I wouldn't recommend skipping this step. After ironing the seams down, I pinned the front and back pieces together right side to right side.
Now that the front and back pieces are pinned together along the sides, you're going to sew where you pinned it. This will become the bottom skirt portion of the dress.
Remember, only sew the side seams.
You now have your skirt all sewn together, and this is like the bottom portion of the dress. Since like the bedsheet material is not stretchy at all, for my last dress, I ended up cutting like down the middle of the back of the dress all the way down, and I added buttons so that way it was able to like get over my hips.
In order to get the skirt portion of the dress on, you'll want to cut about 4 inches down the back of the skirt. We will sew the seam later. This is what the skirt looked like so far with the unfinished back. The next thing we have to make is the dress's waistband. To do this, you'll want to cut a long enough rectangle to fit around your waist. I didn't actually measure this precisely, but instead just simply cut a really long rectangle. I wanted to make the waistband of my dress about 2.5 inches. To do this, I cut a long rectangle 6 inches wide. This gave me enough fabric to compensate for the seam allowance and to fold and double the fabric. Next, you'll want to iron down the folds. I folded up one raw side of the rectangle about 1/2 inch and ironed that down. I then did that to the other side. Once both sides of the fabric were ironed down, I folded the entire rectangle in half, lining up the folded edges, and ironed that crease. Now you have your skirt and waistband portion of the dress. You now want to combine the two. In order to do this, line up the middle of the skirt to the middle of the waistband. Unfold the waistband so that it lies flat. You want to place the skirt into the waistband and fold and pin it close, connecting the skirt to the inside of the folded waistband. This part gets a little tricky as the skirt is circular and the waistband is not, so just go slowly and use as many pins as necessary to secure it all in place. Once you are done pinning, you should be able to lift it all up in one piece. Okay, so now you have like your waistband and the skirt all attached with pins, and you're going to want to sew it all down. So that includes sewing like the waistband flaps down and attach it to the skirt. So just go slowly to make sure that you don't mess up, and then we're almost done. There you go. So now it's all sewn and attached. This will be the front of the skirt, and the back still has the slit down the middle to get it on, and then these two ties. And I'm gonna go try this on and we'll make the top piece now. Once it is all sewn together, this is what it looked like. Basically a really high-waisted skirt with an unfinished open back. Now we just have to make the bodice portion of the dress. To make the top portion of the dress, you want to just like grab some scrap fabric that you have from the piece, and you want to like drape that on you to figure out where you want the neckline to be. This will match up with the waistband that we just added. So you want to figure out how high up on your chest you want that to be. So just play around with it. Let's see. I feel like that's good. Any lower? Oh, and I did change to just like a plain tank top, kind of to figure out this part because I want something that doesn't distract from the look, so I can really like figure it out. I think like that. So whenever you figure that out, you just want to measure from the top to like where you want it to hit the waistband. So this is about 7 inches. I think that's pretty good. It's all like, kind of gotta lay it on you just right. It's like this. Yeah, and then we'll add straps and go from there. Whenever you figure out how wide you want your bodice piece to be, you'll then want to cut that out. We'll be doing the same process of ironing and folding as we did for the waistband. So like I said, I wanted my bodice piece to be 7 inches wide. So I cut out a 15-inch wide rectangle, long enough to fit around my chest. This again allows room for the seam allowance and is enough to fold and double layer the fabric. Once it is cut out, you'll then want to iron down the raw edges like we did for the waistband. So fold up the edge about 1/2 inch and iron that down. Do that for both sides. Once both the edges are ironed down, fold it all in half, lining up the edges, and iron that down as well. You'll then have a folded rectangle that is your desired width. Okay, now you have your top piece. Nothing is sewn yet, it's just ironed down. I did throw a couple of pins in there just to keep it all in place while I did this next part. So you're gonna want to drape it on yourself, and we're going to sew darts so that it hugs like our chest area nicely. To do that, it's kind of just trial and error, and you're going to kind of gather right under your 2 boobs. Then you put the pin in there, so it creates a dart. And of course this would be on the inside of the actual top, but just for marking. You're going to do that to the same one, same thing,
to the other boob. And that looks pretty good for me. After you sew it, you can always like readjust it and just keep going until it's like perfectly what you like. So I just sewed in the darts and they are on the inside here. So when I drape it on myself, this is what it looks like. Something like this. And I'm going to iron it down, so try to get rid of those bumps, and that looks pretty good.
After you are content with your darts, which honestly took me a while to get right, you want to connect the bodice piece to everything else. Unlike the last two steps, this one is just a simple pin and sew, so no dealing with those annoying flaps and edges. Just make sure the middle of the bodice piece in between the two darts is lined up with the middle of the skirt and waistband. Once it's all connected, you can go ahead and sew it all together.
Okay, now that all the pieces are sewed, I went ahead and tried it on. This is what it looks like so far. Again, the back is still open, and we're going to go ahead and add buttons to that now before we add straps, so we know kind of like where the straps will begin and end. It's turning out pretty cute. So to add buttons, you're going to start from the bottom and add them as you're going up your back. I don't have like the special foot to make buttonholes, so I just do it by hand and hand sew on buttons. So that's what I'm going to do. If you have a zipper, you could add a zipper and that would probably be really easy as well. But I'm going to go ahead and add buttons, and you're just going to kind of measure where you want, like how tight you want the dress to be around your waist, and that is where you'd add button in the buttonhole. When you get up to the top, you just continue to do the same. And this loose fabric, you can like cut and add a new hem to whatever the length is that's needed.
Here I am sewing on buttons and creating buttonholes. Oh, and of course, checking myself out in the camera. This is probably the most tedious part of the entire dressmaking process, so if you have a zipper or the special foot thingy for buttons, please spare yourself the time and pain and use that instead.
Hey guys, so I just finished adding the buttons on the back. I might have to add a couple more. We'll see how it goes, like if it's all gathered correctly. But I really like how it's turning out so far, and it fits me really nicely, and it's not too tight, but it's still pretty form-fitting. So I hope that if you're making this as well, it's going pretty smoothly for you. The next step is to add whatever straps or sleeves that you want. In my last dress I made, I added really wide straps and I kept that square neckline, and I did really like that. But I wanted to try something new, so I'm thinking of adding short sleeves. But if you wanted to do the wide straps, you're going to use the same technique we use, making this waistband, like ironing and folding it over and everything. And then you're just going to measure where you want it to go and place it and then sew it on. So that's pretty simple. So if you're doing that, go for it. But I think I'm going to try to add sleeves. I've never done it before, but fingers crossed.
Okay, so after a hefty Pinterest search to gain inspiration, I finally decided to add those trendy, puffy, milkmaid type of sleeves to the dress. However, I had no clue how to do this at all, so I turned to my good old friend YouTube to find a tutorial. I followed this girl's tutorial on how to make puffy sleeves, and I'll link that down below. To follow her steps, I just cut out a sleeve of my dad's old shirt. Sorry, Dad, for destroying all your clothing. And I used that to trace the outline of the sleeve onto my fabric to make my own. With this pseudo sleeve thing that I made, I was able to easily follow her steps to make them puffy, I guess. I didn't film this part of the process, partly because I was lost and didn't really know what I was doing, and that doesn't really make for good entertainment. But also because it was someone else's steps that I was following, and I didn't want to assume credit for it. So I linked her video down below in the description, so if you're interested in adding sleeves to the dress, go ahead and support her and follow her steps. She does a great job. Finally, with lots of ironing and button sewing, somehow this old bedsheet that was once shoved in the back of my linen closet was rebirthed into a dress. And wow guys, I am in love with it. The puffy sleeves turned out great, and I even hand sewn the tiniest sweetheart neckline detail to give it a little bit more of a girly look. I love making my own pieces for all the sustainable reasons I rant about all the time, but also because you can really make them custom fit to your body. Like, this dress fits me perfectly, and I always struggle with finding a good fitted dress that conforms to my waist but isn't bodycon. So this is like the perfect solution. I can already see myself getting addicted and making way too many dresses this week. So long story short, this dress and I are eloping and going to Vegas together. See you guys there. That's all for today's video. I hope you guys liked it. I am obsessed with how this dress turned out. I love it. And I'll make sure to link the tutorial I used to make the sleeves. Overall, I think the dress is pretty easy to make, and it's such a great way to use old fabric that you don't have a use for, say like an old bed sheet or old curtains. So definitely try it out, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment them down below and I'll make sure to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.